Hey y'all, it's Mary Hyatt, life coach, business consultant, Kundalini yoga, meditation and breathwork teacher, certified conversational hypnotherapist, and top leader with doTERRA essential oils. Welcome to season 3 of the Living Fully Alive podcast. Now we're doing things a little differently this time. This season is an 8-part mini-series called Feel to Heal. And we will be taking a deep dive into all things feelings and emotions. How we respond to what we feel inside ourselves impacts our work, our relationships, our health, our spiritual lives, and everything in between. And when we don't have the skills to properly feel and process our emotions, our repressed anger, shame, resentment, fear, grief, and loneliness ends up driving the bus and hijacking our lives. But I want to show you a better way towards emotional resilience, freedom, and healing. Rest assured, I am still here to guide you on the path of inner transformation and empower you to come back into alignment with your soul, trust your inner voice, and design a life that makes your heart sing. So, let's jump into it. Hey y'all, it is Mary Hyatt, and I am so excited for a new episode in our 8-part mini-series, Feel to Heal, where we're exploring all things emotions. And I could not be more excited about my guest speaker today, Rob Murray. He has been somebody that I have been getting to know over the past couple months because I am a part of a cohort that he is running with other professional women in leadership roles. And I'm a little bit like the oddball in the group because I'm a solopreneur and coach. The other women in the group are in the corporate space, in the nonprofit space, but I'm really getting to not only gain some more skills myself, but also learn how to facilitate these groups because my work is often done with executives, one-to-one, or to women who are entrepreneurs or business owners. And what Rob is doing is he is helping these leaders be more effective in their leadership technique by connecting their mind with their heart and really creating this beautiful integration between, getting things done using your strength, your mind, your effort, your hustle, your grind, and infusing that with our emotions, with our humanness, with our ability to have empathy and compassion, and ultimately up our level and awareness of our own emotional intelligence, and then take that into not only our businesses, but also our lives. And so this is such a fabulous conversation with Rob. You're going to love it. But let me tell you a little bit more about him. So Rob is from Cape Town, South Africa, and he graduated from Stellenbosch University before he came to the States in 2002. And he lives with his wife, Natalie, of 18 years, and their 4 beautiful children in Franklin, which is just right outside of Nashville. So that's why I've been able to connect with him locally, which has been so cool. But over the past 20 years, Rob has worked kind of in this intersection between business and faith and social justice. And this journey has led him to get his master's in social and civic entrepreneurship. And he is also in the process of completing his doctorate in transformational leadership. So he is the CEO and co-founder of Transformed Leader, which is a leadership research, coaching, and consulting company that helps organizations that are really mission driven address and overcome their greatest challenges through this concept of emotional intelligence and leadership focus. And so Rob, you'll see, he is just such a effective and experienced speaker. He is an author. He is a change agent and works with executives, works with corporate culture, and is a master at that. And he also has a fabulous podcast. You've got to check it out. It's called Talk of Change, where he opens up to have conversations around the research that he's doing for his doctorate, around emotional intelligence, around transformational change. So definitely go check him out. But I'm so excited. I want to get straight into this interview. So here is my conversation with Rob. Hey, y'all. It is Mary Hyatt, and this is going to be such a fun conversation. Obviously, you heard me sing praises of Rob. Here he is in the flesh. Hey, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mary. What about you?
Man, I'm actually a little bit nervous for this
Good.
interview. Like I like hit the record and I was like, ooh, I've got some like fear happening right now, but
Yeah,
also excitement. Like this is going to be I think maybe one of my favorite conversations. At least that's what I'm anticipating. But if it's
good. Well,
terrible, we'll just whatever, it is what it is.
good. No, that's great. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, okay. So I'm still getting to know you. Obviously, we've had some amazing interactions and conversations, and you've just been already such a gift to me in broadening my understanding of emotional intelligence and just the willingness to sit with my own feelings and do that in a way that is really compassionate and non-judgmental. I love your just frankness around it. Like if you're angry, you're angry. If you're afraid, you're afraid. Like we don't have to make a judgment around that. And you're in your, like, how old are you? Late 30s
I'm in my
ish?
40s. No,
Okay,
I'm in my
40s.
40s.
Okay.
I look really good for my age,
I
by the
mean,
way.
you look fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, okay. So in your 40s, I'm assuming that, well, actually, I shouldn't say I'm assuming. I know that you have been on a journey of life that has contributed to the work that you're doing. And obviously, the series that we're doing right now in season 3 is called Feel to Heal. And you and I were talking a little bit before we hit record about the fact that there's a missing step, that there's a step number 1 before we can get to the
Yeah.
place of feeling in order to create this healing in our lives. And I know that that usually starts with a moment, some sort of a breakdown, some sort of a conflict, some sort of a midlife crisis. And I would love for you to share your story of sort of awakening and that step 1 for you that moved you into this feeling work, this emotional work.
No, you're spot on. It's very hard to feel to heal if you're not willing to at least wake up to the fact that you need to be healed. Healing would insinuate something. There's something broken, or there's something hurting, or there's something not the way it is, or the way it should be.
Mm,
And and we have those moments every day where life is not quite the way it should be,
yeah.
but it's when they compound. And for me, Mary, there was a moment, I feel like it was about 5 years ago now, where 4 or 5 years ago, where my wife Natalie sat me down on the bed and she said, hey, I want to talk. And it was one of those like, uh-oh, wait, what? Like,
Yeah.
this isn't about like, what's for dinner. It was a moment where she sat down and said, Rob, you're a great dad, you're a great husband, uh, you're a good this, a good that, a great provider. And it's like, yeah, 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 yeah. But
And
yeah, yeah, exactly. And she said, but it's very lonely for me to be married to you.
mm,
I'm very lonely with you. Now, her confession of loneliness, like I remember sitting on the bed going, God, like, what do I do with that? And it was a confession where I couldn't like fix it and be like, all right, let's do a date on Friday,
right.
or let me buy you something, or what can I do to fix this?
Mm,
It was like her soul was confessing the loneliness of the connection we had in our marriage.
mm,
And it didn't feel accusational. It felt almost invitational.
hmm,
And at the time, I had no clue. I'm sounding like I was so wise and awake, but I wasn't. I was
yeah.
like, what's happening? Are you going to leave me? Oh, you're leaving me. I know this. This is the story in my head. People always leave.
Yeah.
And so, oh my gosh, what's happening? What's happening? So it was a very
Mm,
dysregulated moment. But Mary, what she gave me now looking back, and eventually what unfolded was the gift of loneliness was I want more with you than what I'm having.
mm, yeah.
And I used to think, wow, because I tied loneliness to abandonment,
Totally.
and so my story was loneliness equals abandonment, rather than loneliness could equal connection, it could
Wow.
equal intimacy. But here I am thinking everything leads towards the negative, and she was just really saying, I want you, and
Mm,
I want more. And I don't know if anybody out there is, you're working your tail off and the feeling is like, am I not doing enough? Like, what else do you
right.
want? And so that was probably how it came out, but it took a few days for it to drop. But what was happening, Mary, was I was starting to see my life for what it really was. And I didn't actually see her loneliness. What I saw was my own loneliness for myself.
Wow.
Okay. When I stayed with her, I was lonely with myself. Like she was onto something. And what I mean by that was, like, I'm in my late 30s and I'm chasing, killing, dragging, bringing it home. I'm in school and I'm in school again. Then I'm building businesses and I'm doing all these things. And before you know it, I don't even really know who I am anymore, nor do I care. I want to be a great dad that's functional. I want to be a great husband that's functional. Everything became functional. And my heart was in some of that. But if we're honest with ourselves, those 20s and 30s are like, I got what it takes, right? Like, look at me go. And I was proving to myself. And before I know it, in the midst of it, we had kind of lost each other. And that's pretty natural too, by the way. It's not like we're unicorns, but it's like we'd kind of lost each other. And she kind of pulled the ripcord and said, all right. Like, now, how do we find each other again? And that was a moment of confrontation when I realized I don't have myself. Oh gosh, like, what is she talking about? Yeah. And to be honest, I had no idea, and which made me afraid. At first I was angry. Then I realized my anger was covering how afraid it was to be me, not knowing how to find something I had no clue where to find or how to find.
Yeah.
So that's a confrontational moment emotionally where my whole life is riding on it, which is what it feels like it. Yeah. If this doesn't work, this relationship, I'm ultimately being rejected, abandoned, or I may reject and abandon, because I know how to do that too.
Yep.
And before you know it, I'm alone again. So loneliness becomes isolation, not connection. All that happened like, wow, in my late 30s, and it shook me to a core. It sounds real beautiful recounting it, or like, like I said, or dropping, but there were weeks and months where I realized I had to, and not in a narcissistic way of like, oh, who am I? But I needed to find out who I was.
Yeah.
Because I cannot give to Natalie or to my children or to my friends or to you. I cannot give to other people something I don't have for myself.
Yeah.
And I realized I have been giving stuff and performing functions, but the sense of being I was doing, but I wasn't being.
Yeah.
And I needed to offer more being. And so doing and being, that head and heart connection became very, very invitational, confrontational, which then led to invitational.
Yeah.
So otherwise, a great time. Just was a great time.
Yeah. I can so relate to that story. And as somebody who's been divorced and who chose to leave the relationship and not work on it, didn't have the awareness, the skills, the tools, the wherewithal to go, okay, this is an invitation. It was like, same thing. The threat of abandonment, let me get out of here. And I think what's so profound about that story is, and this was kind of forced upon you, obviously, by her confrontation, but this moment of radical honesty. Like you said, in order to put the salve on the wound, we have to recognize that we're bleeding. And having that moment to admit very courageously, very bravely where we are, and that where we are isn't where we want to be, that there's something either missing, there's something broken, there's something that is off. And I find that oftentimes that is the scariest step, that first step of looking at your life and going, this ain't it. I am lonely. I am whatever, lost. I am afraid. And I think that giving ourselves that permission to kind of slow down and take inventory and say, wait a second, like this is not how I want it to go. To me, gosh, I mean, that level of bravery, obviously, like with Natalie, she brought that to you, but I can't even imagine how nerve-wracking that was for her to share that with you. Like that risk
100%.
Abandonment, right? For her, if she uttered that and then you just said, peace out, I'm gone. Wow.
No, I'm glad you touched on that, because if you analyze or reflect on the story, let me say reflect, analyze sounds like I'm in my doctorate work here.
Yeah.
if I look back, Natalie woke up, she saw something she wanted that she didn't have, which was a level of connection. Then she had to overcome, you used a beautiful word, she had to access courage and bravery to bring that to me, and to bring it to me in a vulnerable way, which she could get what she asks for. We may have to struggle to get what she wants. She may get rejected because she asked for. I may shame her, like, aren't you grateful for what we have? Like, so sometimes starting to see your life means you have to feel it, but then taking those feelings and bringing them to action is extremely vulnerable and scary.
Yeah.
And so she did that. And then think about it. She did it to another human being. She offered herself and she wanted something with me. And then I'm now dealing with all my crap, which is like, wait, who the hell am I? What do you want? Like, how do I find me? And it took me on my whole journey. I will say the gift that I never knew at the time was, and again, I have to be very careful because we do live in a very me-centric society where we've idealized the me, which has taken away the gift of cultivating me. Is that when I went on that journey to recover and give Natalie something, I had to go get it for me. And I remember thinking, how do I deal with this loneliness I have within myself? Like, who am I? What do I want from this world? Now, and then how do I bring what I want back into a marriage unit? Because we have a family and we have a home. And it was extremely painful because I had to realize part of my story, I've been pushing down emotion for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
And now she's asking for a deeper level of connection. It was a very, that was my courageous journey was, can I go backwards to go forwards?
Amen to that. Yeah.
Very, very, it's almost near impossible to say, can we just forgive and forget? Today's a new day.
Right.
You can manage that for a while, but I wanted the substance, like a fine wine, like Italy, cheese. Where are we? Coming back from Italy back. I wanted to bring the substance of who I am, both the beautiful and terrible, and come back to my home and say, all right, this is me. Now, how do we cultivate us? Right. And anyway, it's real ethereal right now, but back then it was like, and it still has been, it's been quite a journey that I'm still on.
Yeah. Well, it's so raw. I mean, it's just visceral because I think everybody, if you're human, has a feeling towards feeling. Like there's a hesitancy. There's usually a judgment. Like, it's great to say, okay, now go figure out what your loneliness is about and deal with your shame and deal with the part of you that feels like something is missing as well. Like, in theory, that sounds like, okay, I'm going to go on this like courageous journey. I'm going to do it. But in practicality, each of us have all this resistance, which is why we've literally built up the walls our entire lives to not feel. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about that, because you so brilliantly, I don't know if this is like your original idea, but the concept of emotional mindset, to me, like that phrase was new to me, even though I get it as a concept. I was like, that's a brilliant way of saying it. Can you explain a little bit about how each of us has that blueprint, that emotional mindset that we're coming into this conflict with in the first place?
Yeah. I'm in the middle of my doctoral research around emotional connectivity, specifically in the marketplace, leaders, teams, organizations. But one of the things, I love Carol Dweck's work on mindset, her book, but really what her book represents, the research behind it. There's several other fields out there where, and even our work, Jack Nicholson and I, around the human operating system, there's a mindset that we all invest into. So I think like that. What are the systems that govern our lives? Well, here's what I would say. The relationship you have with emotions today didn't just appear last week. Yeah. It didn't happen like a month ago. You didn't like sit on the beach watching the sunset and say, well, I'm going to become a way more emotionally connected human being today. Like, that's my new decision. Right. The way we see the world and engage the world, especially emotionally, comes through a marinating of our whole lives. And the challenge is very few of us want to look at our whole lives. Yeah. We don't want to study our lives. We don't want to experience our lives. We don't want to reflect on them. And those are all different kind of disciplines. Yeah. But what were emotions like, the emotional mindset, the way I like to help someone start to pass out their emotional mindset is I'll say, what were emotions like for you growing up in your home?
Hmm.
And I leave it real vague. Like, and then you see what they say. Like, so what were emotions like? And what you're going to find out is a child from 0 to like 10 is unbelievably formative.
Yeah.
12 years old, their brain's formative. By the time they're 13, 14, they're starting to differentiate. Like, I'm not you, I'm me, but wait, who am I? So there's a little bit of a push and a pull there. But those formative years, your children are learning about emotions based on the family around them.
Right.
So whether you like it or not, it's a mom, it's a dad, it's an absent parent, it's good, bad, ugly, grandparents, whatever it is. But there's a family culture that says this is how we treat emotions in this family.
Yeah.
So that's your emotional mindset. If you are unaware of that, it's very hard in the present to be emotionally intelligent if you're not willing to at least acknowledge the roots.
Yeah.
So that I always say that question: how are emotions dealt with growing up? And I've found now, maybe for simplicity, but I'm noticing the trend of 3 types of mindsets, which we can talk about. But does that add up some of that?
No, it totally does. And I didn't have the framework to explain that, but I find that working with my clients as well, that it always goes back to the way I would phrase it would be like a blueprint, right? We have this blueprint that we're usually completely asleep to. We don't know that we're operating from it. And yeah, it impacts everything. Like I think about, if anger wasn't allowed in your family, or specifically for you, like maybe your dad was allowed to get angry, but you weren't allowed to get angry. Or it could be like, as a woman growing up in the South, there were not only just the family, but culturally, anger was not an emotion that was welcomed for women specifically. Like it was kind of okay for men. I remember seeing my dad get angry a few times. And even then it was a very rare occasion. And so that made everybody nervous in the house.
Yes.
But for girls, I have 4 sisters. So there's five daughters, the anger was not welcome. And so you might have all this energy and it would end up almost turning into anxiety. And so one of the things that I've been able to work on in my own journey is giving myself permission to change that blueprint and to say, you know what? Anger can be a really helpful, useful emotion.
Yes.
And I need to create some space to safely experience that, like in slow, kind of small doses. Because my fear was it would turn into rage, right? Like my fear was if I tapped into that, it would explode and I would be uncontrollable. I would be the bitch. I would be the, the crazy woman that can't hold on to her emotions. And so I've been able to gain trust with myself over time with anger.
Yes.
And that's been a process for sure. Like a very slow and intentional process, but I love anger now. I'm like, gosh, when I think about anything that I've done in my life, it's resulted from feeling an injustice in some way that has made me want to go into positive action to right a wrong. And I love that. Anything that I've done in my life to change it for the better, it started with some anger. So yeah, it's interesting that if I didn't acknowledge that anger wasn't allowed in my family, then I would never be able to actually get to the place where I could use anger for good.
100%. So think about what you just did. I noticed in my life, reflecting on my life, my emotional makeup, my emotional legacy, or the mindset that was offered, right, wrong, or indifferent. You got to get over, we have to start getting over this judgmental criticism. Sometimes there's hurt, which makes us, we have to deal with that. Yeah. But sometimes it's just more of a curious, like, wow, that's what it was like to be me. Oh, look, anger was this underutilized, underallowed, underappreciated emotion. Yeah. Well, how do I access anger? So now you become a student of anger. And so anger offers you advocacy. It's very hard to be an advocate to go take to the streets if you're not angry. Like no advocate woke up in the morning and said, I wasn't angry. They were like, I'm angry for the world to be the way it should be. Yeah. I am now going to go advocate. Now where anger gets off its rails is when I now go advocate and say, you will believe what I believe, rather than say, no, I'm going to advocate for that. I hope you can be a part of this. I invite you into my anger. And it's like my action, right? You take to the streets, there's something to take to. Now, if you don't want to do anger, well, then you become maybe apathetic, and then eventually also bitter. It's like, man, I care about that, but not enough to do anything about it. And like, oh my gosh. So here's a good example. You're just learning about how to cultivate anger in your life, which is actually going to help you become more productive, probably more assertive, probably more passionate and directed at the things you care about. I mean, I think anger is great.
I do too.
But again, you have to go back to notice, wow. And so I'll tell you this, and when you think of your emotional mindset growing up, the three categories are, you wake up and you realize, wow, emotions in my family, feelings are bad, except for the good ones.
Right.
So just avoid them, suppress them. Have them, but just not around us. So like feelings are bad for the most part. They don't really help us. You kind of see that a lot, right? It's like, well, but the good ones are fine. You can be happy, just don't be sad.
Right.
And so a lot of us come out of that. And I also want to give grace to generational trends, people coming out of the world wars, people coming out of certain demographics. The goal of life was like, just get life
survive.
let's like make this thing happen.
Right.
And so, you're sad, well, get over it. Like, we don't have time for sadness.
Yeah.
But if you can acknowledge the fact that, wow, I come from a family where emotions were suppressed, they're essentially bad unless they're good. You can have those ones. Just know that you're not miraculously going to snap out of here and go, ooh, this new series on Feel to Heal, I'm going to crush it. You're probably not.
Yeah.
You're probably going to have a very tumultuous relationship with the series because your family rules are like emotions are bad.
Yeah. Conflict.
The middle, the second one that I've noticed is that, and these will be more the analytics. If you do Enneagram 5s, you've got an Enneagram 5 parent. Yeah. You've got more like, research-based type of environments, but you had some parents they gave you the idea that, feelings are just data. And you say that a little bit, and I agree with the way you said it, but your whole position is like, well, feelings just they're kind of these data points. Like, what are they? Let's learn about them. And I love that. Like, I actually buy into this, but some people camp out there and it's like, well, everything's data. Now it becomes a little analytical.
Yeah. And you're disconnected at that point still. Like, it's still, you're observing it rather than experiencing it.
Yes. And I think you have to have some of that mindset. But if that's all you have, to your point, you are aware of emotions, but you're not connected to them. Well, you just said that. I love that.
And I know, I mean, you may have experienced this too, but I just being in your field of research and doing the doctorate and all of that. But I know a lot of people in this work, therapists, coaches, that you look at their life as opposed to what they've learned about emotions, but there's no integration. It's like, they can talk about emotions, they can teach about emotions, but they don't live it. Like, in their own life, there's a total disconnect. I've worked with many therapists that it's like, how do you know all of this mentally? And yet you are not, like, I don't feel connected when I'm with you. I don't feel 100%. Genuine around, a genuine energy around you. So it's really interesting. Like, it's not just knowing and learning about emotions, even though that is very helpful.
Yes.
When it's not integrated, it's very lonely to be around people like that. Right?
You're speaking my language. It's the can I experience the work and integrate the work? And I call myself, actually, I don't know what I call myself a lot of things now that I think about it. But like, I'm an academic practitioner. Like, I learn to practice. Yeah. And so I probably, and I have some friends that are just academics and I love it. They've given their lives to study things today that I couldn't care less about, but then I take their research and turn it around, and I love quoting them, to use them to embolden the work that I do. But you have to at some point move past that step 2, which is I'm gonna not just see the emotion or connect it or understand it. Oh, I understand why you're sad. But can I connect to your sadness? So the step 3 becomes emotions are good. Can we accept them? Okay, but I want to pause there real quick. So you've got emotions are bad, avoid.
Right.
Emotions are data, like analyze them. Then you've got this third point, like emotions are, let's call them good, or emotions are human, accept them, process them. But I want to offer you two ideas. There's some of us come from families where emotions are good, but dear God, they're terrifying. So it's almost like a tumultuous version of emotion. Like, come on, just feel your feelings. Have your feelings. Like everyone's having their feelings, and you're like, as a child, you're like, dear God, I never want to have feelings ever again. Like this is like, but it's like the parent or the family culture may say, just emotions are great, let them out.
Yeah.
But there's no shared language. There's no accountability. There's no structure. And so even though they're good, they're still terrifying.
Right.
And you're like, oh my gosh, they're happy, they're sad, they're glad. And everyone's just feeling. Well, that's also a very traumatic environment.
Yeah.
So option one is like feelings are bad, don't have them. Option two is feelings are great, express them. Those can be equally terrifying environments to grow up in.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, it's tumultuous. I just keep thinking like an environment like that where there's no boundaries. There's not a sense of safety. It's just like
100%.
a free for all. And as a child, oh my gosh, like I know several of my clients had very volatile parents that were very expressive, very emotional, and that was very alarming and scary and unpredictable, and did not cultivate that sense of safety. So is there a fourth option? Is there like something that we can get to that cultivates all of this?
No, that's the end of the train. Oh gosh.
Dang it.
Life is tough. So, I like a part B to the third option. Like there's some mindset, right? Like what's your emotional mindset? And I go, well, feelings, what if feelings are human, have them, but can we almost borrow from the second mindset? Can we add some structure and some analytics? Can we bring some humanity to it? Yeah. And there's a part of it that says like, feelings are a part of who we are. Can we commit our lives to having them? Because the last time I checked, a 95-year-old person is having feelings. A 5-year-old person is having feelings. You never escape the feelings. It's like the Matrix. And so we sit there and we go, how can we learn to create structures, environments where we can have a shared connection around emotional intelligence, emotional awareness. And so, that's what I commit to. That's the work that's changed me. I learned to speak a language of heart. And I go, how can we all do that? Because if you think about languages in the world, you go to another country, you don't understand the language. It's really tough. You have to pull out your phone. You're trying to communicate. It's like broken language. They're doing the same in your country. And so I've come to the point where I'm just a simple guy where I'm like, can we all just figure out whatever language we're going to speak, commit to it, and then keep showing up in that same way? Yeah. But you have to, at that point, realize you're offering now your family a shared language. And I think the jury's out. We're an emergent generation on feelings are great. Yeah. Let's see what happens. But something tells me it may be a little more hopeful than those in the past. And again, I don't say that as judgment. I just say we've arrived at a time where emotions are more welcome in the workplace, the home place. But what are you doing to bring an assimilation between relationships and a connection between human beings? What are you doing purposefully so that we can all speak the same language? So that's what keeps me up at night.
Well, and you're so good at that. I mean, obviously getting to know you on a personal level, but also inside of a more formal, setting with other corporate leaders and executives. It's a language that can translate to all peoples, which I think is to be able to have a common ground to start with is half the battle. Like, are we using the same adjectives to describe how we're feeling? 100%. And one of the things we talked about this in a past episode is just the importance of expanding your emotional vocabulary. And I kind of mentioned Chip Dodd's work and his 8 core emotions, and you've taken that and gone even further and have added a few to the 8. And I would love for you to share a little bit about your 12 core emotions and sort of the gift and shadow of those, and why it's 12, why that 12, and how we can begin to use that as part of our vocabulary. Hey there, real quick. If you are at all feeling extra overwhelmed or exhausted by social media, or simply don't have energy to read through any more emails, believe me, I get it. That's why I want to invite you to connect with me over text. I send out weekly affirmations, words of encouragement, meditations, and of course, you'll be the first to know about any upcoming events or when I publish a new podcast episode. Plus, it's really me, so it's super easy. Just text 615-930-3522 or go to maryhyatt.com/text. maryhyatt.com/text. All right, back to our podcast episode.
Gosh, I love that. Yeah, part of the story about when I was confronted by Natalie, or should I say invited to more connection. I felt like a confrontation, but it was an invitation. Part of my recovery of self was to start to recover heart, and Chip's 8 core emotions were a massive gift to my journey, and they have been. Yeah. And as I started to take my education in a direction, I started to unpack a whole world of practitioners, educators, researchers, over the last few hundred years that have been doing work around emotions. And without getting into it too much, I just signed up for this idea of core emotions, but more from a socialized point of view. There's a field that says there are core emotions and they're physiological and so forth, and some of that's debunked and some of it's like not, and some of it's great. I'll leave you out all of that, and I'll just say I woke up one day and said what I said earlier: can we just speak the same language? And as I got deeper and deeper and deeper into it, I loved Chip's 8 feelings. Susan David is one of my favorite researchers. She's South African, so I got to stick close to her. Whoop, whoop. And she's out of Harvard, and she has 5 core emotions, and then she breaks them down. And Pia Melody has 8 emotions, and Robert Plutnik was one of a guy from decades ago. And so you've got all these people that have been trying to bring a shared language of emotion. Jack Nicholson and I, not the actor, we've done a lot of work around holistic leadership in our book, The Human Operating System, and it's the idea of functioning on heart, soul, mind, strength. And so I was like, well, what if I went further down into the heart quadrant? I would think of emotional intelligence fitting in this kind of heart quadrant, connecting to heart. What are some of the feelings that kind of go around that? And I started to think of 3 feelings in each quadrant. I don't want to overwhelm you. It's so confusing, but if you saw it and you imagine, well, what are the 3 feelings that could be in the mind of your heart, or the strength of your heart, or the heart of your heart, or the soul of your heart? So it's almost like a hologram, right? You've got heart, soul, mind, strength as a human, but then go down a layer deeper into the heart quadrant, add another quadrant, and then start to put some feelings around that. And you can do that for every quadrant, but the soul quadrant is not as emotionally focused. You've done a lot of great work around the soul, but it includes emotions, but it's different. The mind quadrant is different. The strength quadrant is different. So I end up with these 12 emotions, and the best that I can do is they're like core. What's the word? I'm not much of a painter, but they're like primary colors.
Yeah.
They're a way for you and I to say, can we just agree that we're going to learn what these words mean? Well, what about that feeling? It's not on there. Okay. Well, is it related to that? Is it related to any of these feelings? No. Great. Well, add it. It's your life. Feelings are free. You do you.
I want 13.
Sure. Put on an extra one there, And so what I wanted to do, though, is try to do the best that I can to access some of the emotions that are most common. And they're in order in a way that connects. Like you said something earlier today, like you said, man, I'm really afraid of this interview. Or I think you said afraid.
I think I said nervous, but it was definitely
nervous. Yeah. Nervous is a very light form of being feeling afraid or fearful, right? But you said, and I'm also excited though. Yeah. And those 2 feelings come up all the time. It's hard to be excited without being a little bit afraid.
Right.
So like, I didn't run out here and go, yeah, I'm going to go chase the world down without feeling just a little bit of like, oh my gosh, it may not turn out the way I wanted it to.
Unless you're a total narcissist, and then
yeah, or sociopath.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm starting to notice how all these feelings, and so I've listed these 12, and again, come out of my relationship to these feelings, going to the mat, as we say it, like doing the work. And then what I love is Jack and I have done a lot of work around the gold and the shadow of our lives. And Mary, I'll say this: integration. Do you use that word often?
Yeah. Okay,
great. The way Jack has really helped me understand it is integration, and it's head and heart, light and dark.
Ooh,
so he kind of makes this cross over him, and it's like, okay, can my head and my heart, and then the light and the dark, can those four things start to collaborate and integrate? That becomes integration. It starts with collaboration. Yeah. Okay, let's get them to work together. But eventually, when I walk into a room, my head and my heart is connected, and the light and the dark sides of my life or my leadership are there. So we love the gold and the shadow. Some of that comes up from Carl Jung's work and things like that. I don't want to scare some of you away, but when you start, I'm not talking about sin either. I'm talking about, I work for a nonprofit. Wow, you're so admirable. Okay. Oh, but by the way, I couldn't find any other job. Okay, that's the shadow.
Right.
It's like no one else hired you. So you're not as like noble as you seem. And you have to reconcile. You care about what you're doing in the nonprofit, but you're also aware of the shame that you have that you couldn't get the real job you wanted because you actually wanted to work in some corporate space. Yeah. Or you're working in some corporate space, making a ton of money. So that's the goal to like, look at my cool house. But in your shadow is actually, you feel more called and compelled to work in a nonprofit, but you're not. Yeah. So you're actually denying. It could be the opposite. It makes no difference to me. The point is, are you aware of what's motivating you on the gold and the shadow? And is your head and your heart connected? So that's how we do emotions. Yeah. I walk in and I look at the feeling, and let's take a feeling of, what are you feeling right now, Mary? Just any feeling you're having right now.
Intrigued? Is that a feeling? Or do you want me to use if you want me to use one of your 12, I had to go say that a different way.
That's beautiful. So let's take intrigue. No, it's not one of mine. But it's one of yours.
The 13th emotion.
Yeah, but it's one of yours, and I want to be with you. Yeah. So you're intrigued. Now I have a choice. If my emotional mindset is feelings are data, I'm going to try to get you into my 12. But who could care less about my 12? Yeah. That's not going to force connection. So here's what I'm going to say about your intrigue. I'm going to lean in, and rather than shame you for being intrigued or be, oh, that's great, or just kind of like, great, what else? Like, let's get you to a place where I can feel more comfortable. I'm going to say, gosh, tell me more about your intrigue. I'm not going to say why, because sometimes why is a little accusational, or it's very confrontational. Right. Mary, what are you intrigued about? I'm curious.
I was just about to say that question comes across so curious, and that creates that open door for me. So the intrigue is my wheels are spinning, and I'm just taking in information. I'm thinking about what you're going to say next, what I'm learning, how I can apply this to my work, what I don't know that I'm excited to learn. If I were to use this word in your 12 feelings, it would be excited. That would be the intrigue is leading to excitement.
Oh gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you came to me in the end, and you offered me a gift, which was, all right, Rob, if I'm going to speak your language, even though you have an accent, here we go. Yeah. And let's take the feeling of excitement. Again, remember, so now here's what I'm going through. Excitement is tied to fear. I'm excited about what you're saying, Rob, but man, I also have a little bit of fear of how does this play out in the real world?
Okay, or can I tell you what it is? So it's just for the sake of the conversation. The fear is, I don't know enough. What if I don't know enough?
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Okay. So the fear is, wow. Okay. So now you've got another emotion, shame.
Yeah,
totally. So you came in with, I'm really, really excited to be with you.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit afraid of where this could take me. And oh, by the way, I'm afraid of the fact that I may not be enough, which makes me feel ashamed. So now I have to carry the feeling of feeling slightly ashamed. Now, you're not crippled over. You're still curious because your excitement is there. But if you're someone who has a story of shame in your life, like I like shame. It's like my shame blanket.
Yeah.
I feel like I can put it on and be like, oh, this is a miserable existence that feels so familiar.
I know this well.
Oh,
so nice in here.
You could get off the call and go, man, I'm excited, but your excitement is crushed by your fear, or your excitement is crushed by your shame.
Yeah.
Or you can just acknowledge you're holding those two things and go, wow, it's fascinating. Yeah. I'm going to let all three of them hang out together, but I'm going to allow the excitement and the curiousness of my conversation with Rob to lead this journey, right? And so excitement, here's the gift. The gold of excitement to me is this infectiousness. Okay, now COVID-19 has taken that word in a bad direction. But think about when you're around someone who's excited, what happens? It infects you. You're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what they're excited about. But it's like my body is waiting for someone to be excited. And then it's like, oh gosh, yes. So now I'm starting to feel it, and it produces this idea of joy. I'm feeling like my excitement infects you, and you're starting to feel a little more excited and joyful, and it just creates a great environment. If you're excited and you want to go towards the shadow of excitement, like now you're trying to manufacture the feeling. Okay. So every one of these emotions, think about it. It's like the manufacturing of it. And the shadowed side of excitement to me is sensationalism. Again, that's another big word. And then it eventually becomes deception.
Right.
And what I mean by that is, well, I'm really excited today. Wow, today's really great. I want that feeling to never leave. No, you have to let excitement go. It's like aftershave or perfume. It's like, it's like, oh, it smells so good, but by the afternoon it's gone. Like, you got to let it go. Tomorrow's another day. But if I don't want it to go, I'm going to be torn into sensationalism. Like, come on, we're happy. Like, we're excited, right? And now I'm having to force excitement. And then before you know it, the deception comes in, and that's a strong word. But what I mean by that is I have to deceive you about how awesome I am. And I was reading an article the other day about these Instagram influencers that are like hiring fake jets and fake sites and sets where you go in and you take these pictures to pretend you're on a private jet.
Wow.
Or you pretend, you're on a boat. Now that brings a song. I'm on a boat.
I know.
But, yeah.
Right there.
But if you think about it, they took the feeling of excitement and they sensualized it. And now they're deceiving us. And so I go scroll through my Instagram feed, see this guy on a private plane, and he's like, just living my best life. I am being deceived, but more importantly, he is living a delusional deception of his own life, trying to manufacture the feeling of excitement because he won't let it go.
Wow.
Okay, that's one feeling. Now we have 12.
Yeah.
So we may have to order in food.
I know. Right? Okay. So for time's sake, will you just list the 12 just so we have the reference point for those? And then, well, let's pick one more, but on the more negative list, quote unquote.
Well, so when I think of the mind of heart, again, I don't want to get you too confused if you're listening, but just think of afraid, confident, and lost. And the feeling of lost, I just love having that feeling. Like, there's just so many times I just feel lost. You maybe feel lost listening to this podcast. You're like, there's something about this that I'm into, but I don't know what the hell Rob's talking about.
Yeah.
But what if you could just notice you're lost? Very vulnerable feeling. It opens you up to discovery. So afraid, confident, lost. Okay. Then we go down to angry, excited, and guilty. And I love that excited and guilty is right next to each other. So notice the next time you're super excited, sometimes excitement makes us, sometimes we chase things that are wrong to make us feel excited. but don't worry, guilt is right next to it. So when you're checking in, you can see guilt right there.
Yeah, you won't go too far.
Yeah. So angry, excited, guilt. And then we start to get down into the heart of heart, a little bit kind of below the surface, but ashamed, cared for, and hurt.
Yeah.
Now, cared for and hurt is right next to each other too. I want you to know when you're hurt, it opens you up to being cared for.
Right.
And I always do feelings with little kids because they have learned to not unfeel yet. Like they're in a better place than us. But if one of my kids is going down the hill today and they fall and they trip and they're hurt, I'm going to go and attend to them, but then they're going to feel cared for.
Right.
So the feeling of hurt gets covered with the feeling of care. But if you don't want to be cared for, now you're just uncared for and hurt, but you don't want to be hurt. So that's a tough one right there.
That's
and
tough.
Then the last three is sad, calm. I can't say it in your accent, but calm. How do you say calm?
Calm. Calm.
Beautiful. Calm. But sad, I feel sad, I feel calm, and I feel lonely. Okay, so now we're down in the bottom quadrants. So I'll kind of list them: afraid, confident, lost, angry, excited, guilty, ashamed, cared for, hurt, sad, calm, lonely. And I do them in those iterations because there's relationships that they have.
Yeah.
But if you just saw the list, you could look at them. You could say as many of those that feel true for you today. What are you feeling today? You should at least feel 3, 4, or 5 of them.
Yeah.
Like, I feel afraid in my marriage. I feel angry at work. I feel cared for by a friend. I feel lonely with another friend. I feel sad about my vision or lack of. And you're just starting to notice these emotions are opening you up to states that are happening within you. They're already happening.
I would say they're already there. Yeah.
They're already there. We're just helping give vocabulary and process for you to identify, but then connect.
It's so helpful. I mean, even just having, those 12 words working with you. And I always joke, I'm like, I've been in therapy since I've been 13, am a coach, right? Like I, for all intents and purposes, is an expert, in the world of emotional intelligence, but it can get so complicated. And I love just having the 12 because it gives my brain just enough to hold on to without it shutting me down. And I can just very clearly, without having to use a lot of descriptors, just check in with one word, that one feeling. And one of the feelings, and we'll just kind of end with this, that I'd love to touch on is the feeling of sad, because I think that, at least for me, the judgment I have around sad is that oftentimes that's what kids feel, but that isn't something that is widely accepted for adults. We might be disappointed, right? Which is a version of sad, but that sad doesn't feel super welcomed in our culture either. Will you just touch on the shadow and ultimately the gold, like, of sadness, like why it could invite us into something even more by letting ourselves admit that we're feeling it and naming it?
Gosh, sadness is, I think it was Janina Tyner she's a grief specialist of some kind. And Janina had helped me a lot around this feeling of sadness, which was this idea of sadness is one of the most universal feelings, and yet it's so neglected. Well, I don't want to be sad. Don't be sad. Like I'm recounting, like as a child, your kid's sad. Don't be sad.
Be happy.
And be happy. Don't worry. Be happy. Wait, that was, I don't know if that was on key. I'm so sorry.
Hey, it's great.
We need auto-tune. But the feeling of sad is this. Sadness is a feeling you better get good at, because it's the feeling you're going to experience from the moment you are born to the moment you die. And sadness is loss. And if you are not aware if you don't honor when someone dies, what's the point of a funeral? It's to honor them.
Right.
Okay. So you go there, you honor them, you get on an airplane sometimes, you fly, you go out of your way to honor somebody. What for? For their life. But the sadness is what brings you there. It's the loss of what you once had with them. It's the loss of what you wish you could have, but may never have. It's like, I'm sad. I had this, I don't have that. Well, life is about sadness. My son is 16 years old now. We were at Disneyland a few days ago because I'm an idiot, but it was fun. I mean, but those some serious.
You're a brave man.
Yeah. But he was there when he was a little baby, and I had photos of him. And my son was a baby once. Now he's not. And you could say, well, yeah, that's life. Yeah, but no, that's also sad. Like I miss him. Yeah. And I miss those moments, and I've lost those moments, and I'll never get them back. Well, get over it. Sure. All right. There's enough people that are going to tell me about that. But the feeling of sadness is actually an honoring feeling. And if you start to think of the gold of sadness, it's this idea of, and Chip really helped me with this too, is his work too, is this idea that sadness invites the acceptance of what's lost. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you think of the stages of grief, you go, well, wait, what does grief have to do with sadness? Almost everything.
Right.
Because grief is feeling sad for the things you've lost. So can you come to a point of acceptance? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what's waiting there. This gold, this like new normal of acceptance.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be sad, you're going to go over to the shadowed side, which is first you're going to feel sorry for yourself.
Right.
Okay. It's like, I'm sad, but it's like this very self-pitied, self-centric. And then eventually you're going to start to want to force the outcome. No, this will happen.
Right.
You become very aggressive in what, like, I think the word we've used is demanding. No, I will have another ice cream. I know my ice cream fell on the ground, but I will have another one. Like, you will get me one. So when you look at that kid screaming for their ice cream, it's like they're in a demanding temper tantrum. But what are they really feeling? They're feeling sad.
Sad, yeah.
Like the best thing in their life that happened today just fell on the floor.
Right. Poor buddies.
It's the best thing, and so.
It's interesting because I thought you were going to say depressed, like that the shadow, if you didn't attend to the sadness, that it would get deeper and that there would be this sort of like paralysis that would happen. So it's interesting that you said demanding. I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. That's fascinating.
Well, and so I wonder, let's get curious. Could depression eventually be on the other side of that? So one is I feel sorry for myself. And then it's like, well, no, now I'm going to force it to happen. I will not be damn sad. You understand me? Like, I'm going to make sure this happens. That trip, like how many people are sad from COVID? It like literally crushed our lives. Yeah. Did you have a nice trip planned? Did you have a holiday planned? Did you have a job that you loved? Now it's gone. Now you're sad. Now you should be sad and you should have a funeral. Well, no, I don't know how to do that because in the West, we don't do funerals well.
Right.
We just get onward and upward. What's the next thing that can like distract me?
Yeah.
But if you actually do pure sadness, you could actually grieve the loss of the job you once had, the trip you wanted, have some level of acceptance, now have clarity of thought and clarity of heart to make the next decision for the next brave thing you're going to choose to do, which may also force you to feel sad, who knows, or excited or something. But instead, I feel sorry for myself. Then I become demanding. And then eventually when I realize no one gives a damn and I can't get what I want, maybe depression sets in.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, oh, gosh, I don't want anything anymore. So, I love, that's what you're saying it, Mary. It's like, can we become students of emotion? I'm not going to sit there and shut you down. I'm going to go, I don't know, maybe that's where it leads.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I feel like that's one of your gifts is curiosity is never wrong, I don't know, let's check in, let's see, let's follow this thread. And I think that is such a gentle and kind way to approach this conversation that can feel really overwhelming and scary. It's like, if we can get curious, it all of a sudden takes the pressure and the intensity down a couple of notches.
Yes.
And we can, investigate a little bit and in a safe way. Gosh, I feel like we could go on and on. I know we like barely touched and skimmed, what is so deep. And there's a lot of the iceberg we did not get to. But I have no doubt that this conversation is piquing interest in some of the people listening. So where can they go to find out more about you, about Transformed Leader, about, I have your book right here, about your book and upcoming books.
Awesome.
Where's the best place?
Gosh. I'm a terrible self-promoter. Here we go. But you know what? I'm going to do this because I'd love you to pull the thread. If you've listened today and you said, wow, there's something about the shared language I want. And we've talked about Chip Dodd. We've talked about Pia Melody. I've talked about Susan David. We've talked about myself. I don't care. My life's too short to corner anything. I just find somewhere or some way to find a language that you can start to speak with those around you. And so you can go to transformedleader.com and you're going to get to our coaching and consulting site. It's directed to organizations and companies. So you may not get there and it won't be maybe everything you want on a personal level, but you'll see at least what we do there.
Yeah.
The Talk of Change, I think it's talkofchange.com is my podcast. So I talk about change. That's what I study, how people change. And Amazon has that book you're talking about, The Human Operating System, Recovering the Heart and Soul of Your Leadership. I really like it.
It's great.
It's not a rah, you're amazing, here's 7 principles to change your life, but it's also not a textbook. So it's a little bit in between. So you may have to put your glasses on once in a while and slow down the reading. And then, Mary, I'm super excited because my research and my writing right now, hopefully by end of next year, I'll have a book on emotional connectivity, which I am so excited about because it's like,
I'm excited
it's going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
And then I got a few more in the pipe that I won't share about just right now, but I don't know if that helps.
That's great. No, we'll link to everything, and there are multiple places to find you. Obviously, people can work with you in a leadership capacity as well, but I highly recommend Talk of Change. The podcast is amazing. I listened to every episode, and it was so good. Because it's like you can kind of go through and pick and choose what feels relevant, and I think if you've enjoyed this conversation, you're basically doing this on a bigger scale on your podcast. So definitely check that out. And just thank you. Thank you for your courage, for showing up for your own life, because it has the ripple effect and is impacting me, obviously, and, getting to work with you, and also now everybody listening. So thank you very much.
Well, and likewise, Mary, it's very rare I meet someone who is a student, but also bringing that into their real life, making it real, and the level of vulnerability and connectivity that you offer. It's a gift. So thank you. You keep doing you.
Thank you, guys. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. I had a little geek out moment myself, but I'm sure you did too. So please share this to your Instagram stories, send a text to your family members that, as you go into the holidays, maybe they need a little encouragement to feel more.
Yeah.
But anybody, share this and let Rob and I know what resonated, what hit home for you. I always love receiving your DMs and your text messages. So let us know. But Rob, thank you again so much for being here today. And until next time, sending you all so much loving and light. Bye. Hey there. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share it to your Instagram stories and tag me at Mary G. Hyatt. Or, of course, share it with a dear friend, sister, or colleague. I think we could all use a little more emotional awareness, don't you think? Plus, if you haven't already subscribed to the Living Fully Alive podcast, make sure to do that now so you don't miss out on any of my episodes or guided meditations. All right. Thanks, y'all, and see you next time.